And welcome to the Dental Marketing Guy show. I'm Justin, the Dental Marketing Guy, and today we have a very, very special guest. Let me tell you, Andre Shirdan is a legend if you haven't heard of him in the space of everything dental. He's going to tell you about his niche, but let me tell you, Andre's resume, I can't even do it justice. He's an author, inspirational, motivational speaker, certified software and CAD/CAM, CBCT training professional, and he speaks all over the nation. He's the co-creator of the non-surgical periodontal protocol, and that was created by the CREW process, which he's associated with building block scheduling, countdown confirmation, cell training, and practice par analysis. He's going to tell us all about what all this means. But let me tell you, over the course of 25 years, Andre has worked with thousands of practices, helping to create systems for treatment planning, staff training, goal attainment, internal and external marketing, and computer systems integration. And he's spoken to hundreds of audiences through his workshops, seminars, and he has enlightened and entertained hundreds of audiences across the country. And let me tell you, it is a huge honor to interview you. Let's jump into the kind of the story. I guess your brother-in-law, he was a dentist, and I just kind of want to know, and I'm sure the listeners who haven't heard of you yet, they want to know, what's the story? How did you get into this?
Well, it's funny. I was in really high-end retail. I sold $10,000 ball gowns. I mean, I sold about $750,000 a year in very high-end couture clothing. And my dentist, who happened to be my brother-in-law, asked me if I could help him. And he was trying to look at how he could increase customer service skills, and how he could get his patients to, follow up on recalls and the same things we all deal with in the dental field. And I came in to help him one day, and we took a drive to a dental course, and I got hooked, and I literally never went back to the retail store. I fell in love with dentistry and read every single book. And he was a CE junkie, so we went to every course that we could go to. He spent a ton of money on a lot of consulting, so I went to all kinds of consulting courses with him. So I learned everything I could about the business of dentistry, and I learned from I called him. He was my sensei. He learned, and I learned from him, and it was a great experience. About a year after working in his office, his buddy started asking me for help. So I started going to their offices and helping them, and then going to the next office and going to the next office. And then I live right outside of Philadelphia. Philadelphia, as big a town as it is a very small town. And the doctors started, going, well, I like what you're doing, but I really don't want my buddies to know that you're working with me. So I branched out, and I started working in New England, and I spent almost every day, now this is pre 9/11, so I spent almost every day on a plane flying to New England, or flying south to Florida, or even west to Sacramento. So I, to date, I kind of gave up counting. I've been in 5,000 plus practices, and it was all from the things that my brother-in-law Clyde taught me, and the things that I just sucked up. Everything I could find, I incorporated into what I was doing.
So, I mean, did you intend to get into, I mean, obviously you said you fell in love with it and then you started, the ball was rolling. But when you were working with your brother-in-law, did you anticipate flying all over the country, visiting 5,000 dental offices?
Absolutely not. I had no idea what a dental consultant was. And, when I started doing this, that's what I was doing. I was helping people with their day-to-day scheduling. And, at that time, people were just starting to integrate computer systems in their offices. So helping them, we'd gone through 3 or 4 different systems in our office, and helping them with integrating some of those things. And in 1998, I think it was, we had gone chartless. So we were one of the first offices who gave up paper charts. And it was just because of a need to lower overhead. We were in an apartment building and actually rented a second apartment for our charts. So we actually, kind of figured out a way to get rid of our charts and get rid of that backlog and go chartless. So, it was daunting, but what I did is all the things that I learned from retail and how to turn over inventory and things like that is I kind of applied it to what we did there. But I had no idea I would ever be in dentistry. I barely liked going to the dentist. I don't even like the smell of eugenol. So, you know, so
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's interesting because in dentistry, it's about clinical skills. It's
mhm.
about delivering a good result. But in other types of businesses, it's about profits. It's about the
Yep.
bottom line.
Yep.
So when it's almost kind of an afterthought, it's like, hey, I'll become a dentist. I'll help all these people have better lives. And oh yeah, that's right. I have to make money to feed my family. I forgot about that part. So it's really cool to talk to someone like yourself who comes from the side where profits come first.
Um, have you ever watched the show The Profit with Marcus Lemonis? No.
No, no, no.
Okay, it's kind of like Shark Tank, but they go a little deeper. And Marcus is the CEO of Camping World. And what he does is just like you would see Mark Cuban on Shark Tank. He invests in a company, but he actually gets his hands dirty. He actually goes into the business and he works on it. But what Marcus talks about are the three pillars that a business should stand on. And that's people, process, and productivity. He says product. I say productivity. Um, it's the same thing. Howard Ferrand just wrote that book, People, Time, and Money. Same idea: people, time, money, people, process, profitability. I look at it this way: every business has those three things, but the companies that stand out are the companies that have a fourth pillar, and that's philosophy. And that's where the clinical skills come in. And most patients have no idea. If you're chopping their head off, they wouldn't know it. As long as they have anesthesia, they wouldn't know the difference. So the clinical skill, although it's important, is the least important when it comes to business dynamics. It has to do with the philosophy of the practice, where the doctor comes from. Clinically is about what his philosophy of care is. Does he do amalgams? Does he do implants? Does he do Invisalign? It's that philosophy that we build on, because without knowing that philosophy, how could you hire staff, people? How could you have processes in place? And how could you have a profitability? And profitability could be that you do a lot of charity work. It's not just about money. So profitability, like for me, profitability in my world is really about getting home to family. It's about enjoying the time off. It's not about the money. I have enough money that I don't have to worry about that. But it's about the time that you spend outside the practice. And that's what the profitability part of that is.
That's interesting.
So,
That's really interesting. So it's about, I mean, I'm always telling dentists, you would never sit down with a hygienist or an assistant or an associate and say, you know what, I just want to know your clinical skills. I don't want to know your backstory. I don't want to know anything other than the black and white. Can you take an impression without the bubbles in it? But don't tell me where you come from, where you were born. Don't tell me, how many brothers and sisters you have. I don't need to know that. The truth is, nobody would ever do that, and because that's how our minds work. Is we want to know the why and the story behind why are you coming to my practice? Why do you want a job here? Why do you want to work with us? And it's funny because when we become, whether it's a dentist or a business owner of another kind, we think because we hang up a shingle, everyone's just going to immediately drop all that. So I totally agree.
yeah.
This is
And that's the basis of the company that I run now, which is called the Crew Process. It really is about, years ago when everybody was talking team, the issue with that, and I did a lot of team building. That was one of the things that I thought, okay, everybody's going to love this, and we're going to do team building. And what I learned from that is we got to love each other, and we all got to be good friends, but we weren't all actually rowing at the same pace. We were just good friends. We all drank in the evening, or we all did that kind of stuff, but we didn't have a common goal. And that goes back to those four pieces: people, process, profitability, and philosophy. So the same thing is where I came up with this crew process, so that when you're on the boat in the practice, we are rowing and we have a common way that we do things. And if we're on the boat and we're rowing and all of a sudden the boat's drifting to one side, well, obviously it's somebody on one side who's not pulling their weight. It's a good analogy to think about. And we have to correct that. we have to get them back in alignment with everybody else. If you've got two hygienists and one diagnoses differently than the other, then we've got to get those back in alignment. We've got to get them back to rowing like a crew in the same pace. So that's when I came up with this crew process. And what happened is it changed the dynamics of the team, a hundredfold, because now not only did they realize that we have something that we're working towards, the philosophy of the practice and the profitability of the practice, and we have processes in place to get us there. They really finally understood why they were doing it. Like you said, it's the Simon Sinek, what's the why? That's the thing that changed a lot of what I did, is to dump this idea of team. I hate that idea of team now. And all I try to do is say, hey, look, I don't care if you have blue hair and tattoos. When we're on a boat, you've got to know how to row, and you've got to be able to row, and we get into a swing. And most offices will be able to appreciate that. When the doctor puts out his hand and then the instrument automatically goes into the hand, that's part of that swing. And that's all got to be in alignment. And that's, like I said, in coaching, that's what I work on, is watching to see if I can get that swing happening. And if it's not, what's happening? What's the breakdown that's happening? A lot of it is because we haven't expressed it. Like you said, the doctors haven't said, these are the things I expect in order to create an outcome.
I guess I'm coming at this from the perspective of a few clients of mine. They just bought a CEREC. I know this might be a little bit niche for some of our audience, but let's say they just bought a CEREC, and how do you help them? Say he just bought a CEREC and he's pouring some money into marketing. He's biting his nails, saying, new practice. How am I going to do enough same-day crowns to justify this purchase? How do you come in and help?
Well, it's funny you mentioned CEREC. I mean, I worked for Patterson for 11 years, and that was a big part of what I did, was actually going in as a trainer, but not as a technical trainer. I mean, I know the machine. I've used CEREC since CEREC 2, but my job was to show them how it's going to fit into the scheduling model. How is it going to be part of their lifestyle? Because that machine is phenomenal, but a lot of doctors I see them put in the corner. I have a doctor about 20 minutes from me. He calls it his Mercedes he doesn't drive. He put it in his garage and it sits there because he wouldn't take the time to understand how the machine works, not technically, but how the machine works in his practice. It's a lifestyle change. And, he would say things to patients like, would you like to get your crown today, or would you like to come back and we'll do it as a two-step? Well, how do you embrace that technology if your mindset's not behind it? So CEREC is one of those things, because I've been doing it for such a long time, the guys who get it. The guys who are doing CEREC on a regular basis, who are part of that community, get it. And I equate CEREC with like Harley Davidson. There's absolutely no reason in the world anybody needs a Harley. But once you get one, you're into it. You start wearing the jackets. You start hanging out with other Harley owners. You'll spend a week in Orlando or in Vegas with Harley owners, and that's what happens with CEREC, and it becomes a lifestyle. But if you don't, you're going to miss it, because what happens is if you buy a Harley and you're afraid to drive it, it's going to sit in your garage. And your wife's going to tell you it makes no sense to own a Harley. And your staff's going to push back on it. You're going to hurt yourself if you drive that Harley to work. You shouldn't be driving that Harley. And that's what happens with CEREC. We have to change the mindset before it. And it's a shame that people don't take their entire crew to Scottsdale or wherever they're going to go, to Charlotte, to understand how to actually use the machine. They've got to be part of that process. It's expensive, but you just bought a $100,000 machine. What's another couple $1,000s in training your staff?
Yeah, and I've thought about that, because it's like such an expensive piece of equipment. Why wouldn't you spend a few grand promoting that piece of equipment? If it's that great, tell people about it. Of course, there's a way that you do that, right? Because you don't want to get too technical, and a lot of people don't even know what CEREC is, but they know what same-day crowns are versus come back 2 or 3 times and all that. So is there sort of a script or some playbook or some quick tips we could give to someone who just bought a CEREC and they want to get their team behind it and they want to get their patients understanding the value? Maybe just something kind of quick to take away from this interview.
Well, one of the things that I always do, and I do it in conferences, I could have 3,000 people in the audience. And, one of the things that I think is really, really neat to do is uh, have the doctor get an index card. And on one side of the card, write yes. And on the other side of the card, write no. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put those behind our back, everybody in the crew, and we're going to stand in a circle. And we're going to ask a question. Do we believe that every patient is a candidate for same-day crowns? And everybody holds up their sign. And when somebody has a no, we need to have a conversation. And we need to find out, why aren't they rowing at the same pace as everybody else? Or we believe that everybody should be amalgam-free, if that's your thing, whatever. And everybody holds up their sign. And what we do is we need to get everybody in alignment. And that's such a great test, because you can find out that somebody is pretty much hostile towards your idea. But unless you bring it out, that hostility is going to turn into rescheduling your patients or scheduling you for 15 minutes when you need an hour and a half. So something's going to happen in that process to hurt you. So I think just bring it out and try this yes or no test. That's first. The other thing is, and I do this all the time. I think I probably have 12 emails from offices. I ask them to define their smile, to tell me what their philosophy of care is. And I need it to be a one sentence. It needs to be quick, short. And that is something that if they can't do that, if you can't say you're Allstate, the good hands people, if you can't say something in a short sentence instead of this flowery mission statement that's up on the wall, then you're not going to be able to express that to your patients. And you're a marketing guy, that tagline is key to where you go forward as a marketer.
Yeah. Because you might tell someone on the headline of your website, hey, we're a dentist in such and such city, but right under that you got the subheadline, and you got to be getting into what makes you different right away.
Exactly. Yeah. Differentiation is the most important thing in dentistry right now, because if you don't take my insurance, I'm not coming to you. That's what we hear all the time.
Right. And I'm sometimes a little bit reluctant to lead with the insurance as a unique sales proposition, because I can't say the word sales in dentistry, but a unique value proposition.
Well, I've changed the word sell. So what I do when I have a whole course that I do on sell, but I use the acronym seeking, equal, listening, and learning. But in dentistry, what we're doing is we're trying to seek a commonality. And like I said, an equal listening and learning. It's got to be both sides of this. We have to be able to listen to the patient, teach them something, listen to them, teach them something. That's what we're selling. And there's nothing wrong with that 4-letter word. We can use it all the time.
Yeah, well, you'd know the old saying, telling is not selling.
Yep.
If you're just telling someone all about CEREC, you could be super passionate about it and be like, oh yeah, and then there's this thing, and this gives and it does this, and they may not care. They may not even care. So when you listen to someone, you come into where they're coming from. You learn what's important to them, and you get buzzwords, right? They say, my mom had she lost her teeth. She wore dentures. I never want that to happen. And many dentists will just be like, oh, well, that's okay. That's pretty obvious. I'm not going to re-mention that. That's obvious. They know. But if you keep bringing that up, hey, I think you should get this crown because like you said, your mom had dentures. You don't want to do that, and then you keep bringing them back to that, right? Is that kind of some of the stuff that you go over?
That is, and a lot of times, because I can go anywhere from like I said, Philadelphia to some small town someplace in the U.S., and some things that work in Philadelphia aren't necessarily going to work in Culpeper, Virginia, or whatever, Waterborough, Maine. So what we're able to do is to find a common language, but we still are looking for a template, something that works in their vernacular, something that works. What works here on the East Coast is going to be different on the West Coast, but there still should be a commonality in the rhythm of what you're saying. I love it because it's a challenge every day for what I do with my clients.
Absolutely. Well, this has been really educational. Could we maybe go over maybe 2 or 3 quick tips? I know we talked a lot about CEREC, but just kind of as a broad swath, like 2 or 3 quick tips that you could tell dentists, and then we'll talk about where to find you.
Sure. So number one, and this is just a mulligan. Number one is doctors should be taking their crew, staff, team, whatever, wherever they go, especially if they're introducing new information. Everybody's got to be there. Everybody has to drink the same Kool-Aid. Otherwise, you're just going to waste your money. You're going to come back on Monday and everybody's going to shut you down. So everybody needs to be involved. That's one. Number two is we need to clearly define our clinical protocols, all right, and our clinical philosophy. And I'm going to take that a step further. So it's not just restorative. The other part of it is the hygiene program. And I created StatCheck, which is our periodontal program. That has created some really clear norms for hygiene departments across the country. It's something that I wrote and put into Dentistry Today years ago, and it's for the masses. It's not something anybody has to pay me for. It's something that people read this article, they get on the same page, they have a meeting, and it's in the office and they do it. Those are the things that start you down the path of consistency of brand. Whatever your brand is. Those are the things that I start with. We all go to the same meetings together. We all meet to talk about consistency, and then we build these consistencies through our clinical philosophy on restorative and our clinical philosophies on perio. Those are the two things that are most important when I work with an office. The other stuff happens over time. Answering the phone, very, very important, but it's different. If I'm in Tennessee, I'm going to answer the phone differently than if I'm in Manhattan. But there still needs to be a certain number of things that we say in order to, that I tease all the time. But when I worked in an office, I would ask questions like, why'd you leave your last office? And patients would say something like, oh, well, they want me to pay every time I come. Well, maybe I want to hang the phone up, So, you really have to be ready for that. But different things work in different places. And again, it goes back to the practice's philosophy of care.
Well, right on. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So where can the viewers find you?
So easiest way, my website for the company is The Crew Process, the crew, CREW process.com. That's a great way to see where we are, because we post all the different events that we're going to be at. I try to get across the country as much as possible, or international. Next year I'll be in Singapore, I'll be in Brazil. So going international next year. I did the Dominican Republic last year. So that's a good place to start. And Facebook. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. Instagram just at The Crew Process, and then I have another Instagram feed that's the Crew Process Dental. If you just want dental stuff, and my cell number, I love giving my cell number out because my phone rings 24/7. Is 484-437-5562, and email Andre Andre Syst SYST at Comcast.net. So any way you want to get me, I'm social media, email, phone, doesn't matter. And I love talking to people. Again, it's not about profitability. It's about helping my clients, or anybody. It doesn't have to be my client. Anybody who wants to be more productive. So I love talking to people.
Excellent. Well, it's been very educational and a real pleasure to have you on, Andre. It's just, yeah, that was pretty interesting. To redefine the word sell in dentistry is definitely a sign of thought leadership. That's definitely pioneering something. So thank you very much for coming on.
Hey, my pleasure.
And thank you for watching the Dental Marketing Guy show.